I'd be slightly horrified by that, to be honest, because if the enemy already knows my acoustic signature and they've not had to come in, I've just lost one major advantage that goes with it.
But we've seen, in the last week, there's been reports about the Russian Navy and the Chinese Navy holding joint exercises. How concerned should we be about this increasing cooperation that there seems to be with China supporting Russia in its fight against Ukraine? We saw before that Chinese Navy coming up and exercising with the Russians. We've seen some Chinese army coming up and exercise with the Russians, and we've now got this exercise being built. Is this a level of cooperation that we haven't seen before?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the difference now, and it is genuinely concerning. And if you're in Asia Pacific, I'd be really, really concerned about this, which is where I think the focus will shift towards. At the expense of the North Atlantic, I think that's where this is going to go. But before the Chinese would turn to the Russians to learn tactics, and this is very different. The Chinese are so far advanced with their tactics and how they've built a navy. We always used to go, how are they going to train people to do stuff? And they've done it and they've managed it. And I think it's almost the other way around now. The Russians learning how they integrate with the Chinese, and the Chinese are the leading force.
Okay, interesting. But and how they integrate and all the rest of it. The latest Russian nuclear submarine, the Ukrainians seem to have pulled off a real coup by hacking in and getting the plans and publishing them out onto different websites, revealing sort of potential vulnerabilities and all the rest of it. Um, and all this comes at a time when Moscow, you say the focus might shift to the Pacific, but Moscow's also increasing its capability in the Arctic, and I suppose the trade routes through the Arctic connect Atlantic Pacific and are going to be critical to all of this. How significant is that sort of leak and that hack from a submariner's perspective? If you were going to command one of these new boats, would you be concerned that people have got an advantage now in trying to find you?
Yeah, I'd be slightly horrified by that, to be honest, because if the enemy already knows my acoustic signature and they've not had to come in, I've just lost one major advantage that goes with it. The only thing that plays against that is the fact that sonar technology now, I mean, submarines are so quiet now that sonar technology is struggling to keep up. And so actually it's all about using other methods in order to detect submarines. And interestingly, I mean, I've operated under the Arctic, under the North Pole and beyond, and that is a really harsh environment. So any advantage that you can get from intelligence like that gives you a huge advantage in that particular area.
So that's good on Ukraine, but again, good on Ukraine. If we shift to the Black Sea, uh, Ukraine doesn't have a navy. Um, Mind you, they've managed to systematically dismantle the effectiveness of the Russian Black Sea fleet, confining them really to close Russian shores, moving them out of their Black Sea Fleet headquarters that was in Crimea, sinking about a third of them, damaging about half of them. How have they been so successful in achieving this level of denial of the seaway to a supposedly much superior on paper naval force?
Well, I think it's a classic example. Well, it's classic. It's not a classic example. It's a brilliant example of where a country with no maritime doctrine is not constrained by that and just looks for radical ideas to be able to do this. It's amazing when you think about it. Western nations are constrained by doctrine. Is thought to be a good thing, but actually it doesn't let you do the out of the box thinking. And so they've just moved at speed. Somebody's just turned around and said, "Hey, I've got a good idea. Let's do this," and they've just done it. Whereas if you tried to do that here in the UK and pushed it through the MOD procurement system, maybe 15 years later, you'll have what you should have had today.
Well, or 15 years later, you'll get something that is less than 60% of what you should have had today and what you really wanted, but will have cost 10 times the amount. Seems to be the way it works. And I always remember people saying you should not apply doctrine dogmatically because that's when it starts to fail, which we tend to do. But do you think that the lessons that are coming out of that are going to revolutionize the way we procure our military equipment, the way we develop our capabilities in the West? And I suspect in every domain we're beta testing as many new weapon systems and capabilities as possible in Ukraine's war against Russia.
I would hope it does. I think that, so for example, whenever ever we wanted an urgent operational requirement, we always got a really great bit of kit, and you might pay more for it, but it was a great piece of kit whilst procurement caught up. I think it changes if other nations start doing exactly the same, which is, hey, look, let's make something cheap, simple, just does what it says on the box. That changes warfare because we either catch up and adopt the same form, or we lose out because having technology that's so complex is not always the answer. Simplicity in the complicated is the answer.
Oh, come on. From UK perspective, it has to be gold plated and diamond encrusted. Otherwise, it's not going to. Whether it works or not doesn't matter as long as it's at that elite level. I think seems to be UK procurement. Um, but Russia's still operating Kilo class submarines in the Black Sea, and we've seen them launching caliber cruise missiles successfully into Ukraine. Ukraine's air defenses are having better results against them. But how significant does the caliber class threat in the Black Sea still pose? And conversely, how vulnerable are they to Ukraine's innovative tactics? We've seen them get damaged in port, but could there be other ways that they'd be vulnerable?
Well, I think let me take the first question first. So the Caliber missile is a bit like the Tomahawk land attack missile, the Russian version of it. Immensely capable, but slow enough to be taken out by air defense systems, and they don't have the same luck with hypersonics or some of the ballistic missiles that Russia's been firing into Ukraine. I think the next stage on from Ukraine's innovative way of dealing with submarines is, underwater drones, and how do they deal with it underwater. The difficulty for them then is how do they detect the submarine to start with. So that becomes probably the limiting factor. But I bet someone is trying to invent that capability to be able to take out dive submarines in the Black Sea, and hoping that the West gives the surveillance capability they need to be able to detect them.
Yeah, I don't think either of us could actually expand on that and comment and without upsetting a few people. But yeah, I hope so too. Now you let's turn to the threat that you've warned about extensively. In some of the stuff that you talked about, coming closer to home, but it also goes into not just the Black Sea, but the Baltic Sea and everywhere else. We've got our subsea infrastructure, our critical national infrastructure and the cables. We've seen those being interdicted in the Baltic. We've seen them being supposedly cut around Shetland. We've seen Russian spy ships off key nodes in the Irish Sea and out in the Atlantic and everything else. And then of course, we saw the Nord Stream 2 pipeline getting damaged. How vulnerable do you think our subsea critical infrastructure is? And how much do you think our economy depends on the likes of you in your previous life managing to keep that safe?
I think we're an island nation, right? So we do rely massively on different cables, whether it's for communications, whether it's for energy, whether it's for a variety of other things. It is critical national infrastructure. The challenge, of course, is who's got responsibility for that infrastructure. Is it the owner of the infrastructure? Is it a government because it suddenly becomes critical national infrastructure? And then what can we actually do about whatever they're doing? So the first thing is, what are they doing? Now, we assume they're cutting, they do cut cables on occasion, but are they gathering intelligence from that stuff? Are they sending other messages? Who knows what they're doing, because we haven't got anything that can go down that deep to go see what they've done. So developing that capability to be able to go and check and then repair becomes everything. But then also surveilling what their program does and who's doing that is also really, really difficult. So that does need military. It can't just be done from the companies that own the cables themselves. I think once they've sorted out the first bit of who's responsible for what cable, then they need to put the countermeasures in place to make sure that it can be protected.
But again, we're seeing attacking critical infrastructure and us sort of been caught slightly with our pants down. We've seen Ukraine innovate with drones in the way that they've managed to decimate the Black Sea fleet. Um, you, with all these changes that are coming in, do we have the flexibility in our, and not just UK, but our Western psyche to be able to innovate, look forward, look at how threats are developing, and create the countermeasures before the threat actually manifests itself? Or do you think, as you said earlier, we're too stuck in our doctrinally driven, dogmatic ways and we're always going to be playing catch up.
I think there are individuals within the system that can come up with some great ideas. I said the beauty of being serving as captain on HMS Turbulent was we came up with some absolutely brilliant stuff, and we were able to deploy that stuff because we had control of HMS Turbulent effectively. We weren't answering to somebody else to get their sign off on whatever it does. And unless we change the process, we lose the chance of implementing these innovative ideas that people have really, really quickly to solve problems. It's like I said, I spent many an evening thinking about how to solve the problem about protecting critical. I've got some great ideas to go with it, but if I fed those in, it'd be decades before something was realized, and then it's all too late because we've moved on to something else.
Go on, give us a flavor. If you had to, you're put in front of John Healy now, and you're saying to John, right, you've asked me how to spend money. We need to protect this. What are you going to tell him to do?
Well, I'd turn around and say you need to think broader than just the critical national infrastructure. You need to think about the intelligence apparatus that goes with this in order to prevent, so you know what's coming, where it's going to, and what you need to intervene with. And then you need to have the capabilities to intervene that. And there's some great concepts out there. You just need to implement these things rather than using commercial off the shelf stuff as opposed to bespoke capability.
Yeah. So the latest ships that have been brought into Royal Navy colours are commercial off the shelf former North Sea oil rig support ships. Do you think that's the right way to go?
Well, I do in some ways. I mean, I was in charge when I left the Navy. I was in charge of a Shearwater, which was a high pressure, high temperature drilling platform in the drilling production platform in the North Sea. And I always used to look at the support vessels and go, "My God, those are impressive bits of kit that the Navy should look at buying." Because you can put some weapons on them, but all the other capability is incredible. So I think that's the smart move to bring those into the fold, and we should go out and buy more of them.
Yeah, but trying to dispel some of the myths that are out there. A standard nuclear attack submarine, whether it be British, whether it be American, whether it be Russian, whether it be Chinese, isn't ordinarily configured to go and schnurgle around critical national infrastructure, tap into it, cut it. They need other specialist things that can come and help them do that.
That's correct. I mean, attack submarines aren't designed for that at all. I think there was one potentially in the US that was, but the Russians have their own underwater program with Lisharek is the name of the submarine that they use in order to do that. But there's other ways of doing it. You don't need submarines to be able to do it. You need ships with the right capability that could go all the way down, because how do they service those cables? They service them already using civilian ships with the right capability.
Yeah, and it seems to be that they're cutting them in a very simple way by just getting super tankers from the Grey Fleet, dropping their anchor and just dragging them across, and that will damage anything else in the seabed.
Yeah, absolutely. The range of where they need to operate, it doesn't need to be in 4,000 meters of water. You can do it in 50 meters of water and easily create the same effect.
Yeah, the simplest approach is nearly always the best. Yeah, do you think the UK is in a position, and it's not just the UK, I suppose, it's our European nations and our American brothers as well are in a position to properly affect and protect the thousands of miles of infrastructure that are lying on the seabeds that we have out there, or have they just been randomly put down without the thought of protecting them at all? That's someone else's responsibility. And is this a true naval mission? Is it a mission for? Is it something that the companies that own the cable should be contributing to, so it doesn't keep hitting the defense budget? Do there need to be private naval security companies?
That's a really good concept. Now you got me thinking of a business idea there. I like that. The so the cables. I think the future generation of cables will all be armored sufficiently to deal with most stuff. So as you go through this replacement cycle of cables, then they will be better protected. But that doesn't take into account all the existing cables. So there does need to be something in place to be able to protect effectively. And why they might want to go for really deep water cutting of cables is because it's extremely difficult to go and repair them at that point, which then results in replacement, which then results in hits the economy, all that kind of stuff that goes with it. So the whole strategy between underwater cables is absolutely fascinating, and how you protect those. And I'm not certain that we've got that yet.
So, looking at things from a geopolitical perspective, and with the war between Russia and Ukraine, with what's happening in the Middle East, and we haven't touched on Iran and Iran's naval and submarine capability, and with what China is doing in Southeast Asia, do you think we're on a path that could develop into a more global conflict at some stage?
I'd like to think that that isn't the case, but it feels like we're closer than we've ever been to that potential, and that's not to be alarmist or scary or anything else like that. It's just that if everything repeats itself, and you only have to go back in history. And we've always said the nuclear deterrent has been the one reason we haven't had another World War 50, within that timescale. But people are becoming less interested in the impact of releasing nuclear forces. We talked about tactical nukes and all this kind of stuff like it's just a toy, and you're thinking this is really, really significant. So if our politicians aren't thinking in those terms, then it can escalate very, very quickly. I'm not talking about just British politics. I'm talking about politicians across the world, because those are the ones that decide where we go. So it does concern me. It feels like the world's as unsafe as it's been in my lifetime, and that's really, really concerning.
Yeah, and people don't realize, and this is, I think, the 80th anniversary of the Americans dropping the nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. People don't realize that there's no such thing as a tactical nuclear weapon. Dropping a nuclear weapon will have a strategic effect, and is something that should never happen. Do you think the use of the word nuclear by Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin's team, Putin has used it himself, but all this came down to Medvedev threatening Donald Trump in the first place is not helpful?
I do think I think calming down the rhetoric would be a really, really useful way. That there are different ways to, I cannot believe that the diplomats who are clearly trying to negotiate and do everything else are helped by the rhetoric from either side. I just don't think it helps.
Well, Ryan, on that point, I hope the diplomats are listening. Thank you very much indeed for talking to me today on Frontline.
Thank you.
You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like access to exclusive content, please subscribe to Times Radio membership and watch us on YouTube. But you can now get us as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And don't forget, you can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs and read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.